A warm good evening to all of you. Myself Kishor from NRSC will speaking about network security protocols and best practices. Okay, I will confine my discussion basically all the lecture basically to network security. I will not digress into networks because it's a vast subject, but they all are interrelated. But kindly be very clear that both are two different aspects of looking. You will be handling the same devices but a different perspective. So the thought process or the skill sets required will be different. And based on the course schedule which I have seen, which has been framed by by IIRS for you, cyber security and a part of that network security. Basically, my lecture I have organized in this way: introduction, importance of network security, common threats, then what are the protocols related to network security, best practices, and some case studies with regarding to security, and I'll conclude my talk. Now, coming to network security, first thing is network security in an overall term is a subset of, there are three words which you use: information security, cyber security, and network security. In this, network security deals with the different devices which we handle and their standards, the protocols for interfaces, and the threats involved, the measures taken, that is cyber security. And information security is a superset of all this, whereby it involves protection of data, information, devices, overall. So in that, today's topic is network security. So that way, we will digress into that. So what is network security? It refers to the set of measures and practices designed to protect the integrity, confidentiality, and availability of networks, data, and information within a network infrastructure. So basically, when we come to security, in all previous lectures, you might have already heard of CIA triad: confidentiality, integrity, and availability. So any problem or any solution or any device or any human interface, we need to look at from, or any data, how are we maintaining it? What is the confidentiality, integrity, and availability of any of these or of a service which is being provided? So we will further discuss about this triad, because any problem, any aspect of these things can be defined from the CIA triad. So in security parlance, these three keywords will help us in focusing towards security aspect of a thing. Then what is the primary goal of network security? Is to safeguard against unauthorized access, data breaches, and cyber attacks. And what do we need to do? As an administrator or a custodian or a host, it is responsible to implement robust network measures to mitigate the risks associated with the threats and ensure that the overall well-being of an organization's digital infrastructure is maintained. On the right-hand side, for a visualization, see, it's like it involves everything. You start with firewalls, then you do with encryption, you have IDS, IPS, then you take care of data loss prevention. How do you ensure secure communication? What are the security policies? These are only few of the things. In the next 1 hour, we will be repeatedly discussing of all these features, because these are the functionalities or features or the aspects which help us in ensuring the security posture. What are the key objectives of network security? As I already told, in security, again, you come back to the same CIA triad: confidentiality, integrity, and availability. Now, what is confidentiality? It is protecting information from unauthorized access. How can we do it? By encrypting the data, encrypting the channel. And how do we maintain the integrity? What is integrity? Ensuring data remains accurate, unaltered, and trustworthy. Today, some data we are transmitting from source A to destination B. Then, if the integrity of the data is maintained, only then the data can be consumed and properly taken forward. How do we ensure that? By validation mechanisms, checksums, adding digital signatures, access controls to prevent unauthorized modifications. These are all the things. Then coming to availability, ensuring that network resources and services are consistently accessible and operational is availability. So confidentiality is protecting information, integrity is ensuring the accuracy of the data, or ensuring the unalteredness of it, and availability is the available. Availability is ensuring that the services and resources are consistently accessible. And how do you ensure availability? The means are to ensure redundancy, fault tolerance, disaster, DR plans, mitigate attacks. So these are the things. So in network security, in security primarily CIA, and in every aspect of major security domains, as I have told you, today in network security also, any problem, any device, any service we provide has to comply to this. If it is complying to these three aspects, we can in a way say that our service is secure. So when you are building or providing a service also, we have to think in that way. And what are the key components now? See, what we have seen earlier is, what are the key objectives? Key objectives is to maintain confidentiality, integrity, and availability. And the next thing is, what are the key components? How I can meet those objectives? That is how we should think. If you don't think in that perspective, as I have told in the beginning of the few minutes back, what happens is that it becomes very difficult to maintain and that security gets diluted. So you have to keep focusing when you are thinking from a security perspective. Otherwise, the target of ensuring the availability, ensuring the will take over of all other things. Then whether confidentiality is maintained, whether integrity is maintained, many a times we lose focus on that. And that is when the issue comes. Otherwise, generally, whenever we are providing a service within the organization or for any outside, that is to the outside world, we generally build a system, build an application, and we think it should be available. That is only one aspect. There are two other important aspects, confidentiality and integrity. So that only then we can tell that our target, our aim of providing a service is properly or can be properly met continuously to the end users. Otherwise, if an end user who is a potential end user for your application is getting diverted because of man in the middle attack or because of spoofing, then who is the user? You as a host who wanted to provide service to that user, he is not able to reach. And who is responsible for it? Because you have declared that you are providing the host, you are responsible and you are losing. Today, that end user may not meet his requirement, but tomorrow he will get diverted to a source who is providing a proper foolproof service. That is the risk in today of any business, any organization, if we don't comply to those security aspects. End user will anyhow, if not A, he will go to B and meet his requirement. Today he may lose it. His system can be cleaned very easily, but you as a host, the damage done to you, the damage to your brand name, to the organization. So all these become important security. And as we just now we're discussing, that CIA triad helps us. Anything I am providing, am I meeting confidentiality? Am I meeting the integrity? Am I meeting the availability? This is how we should keep ourselves focused. Now in that, the key components are authentication, because these are the primary. So I'll delve a bit detail about this. Only few of things are there, one slide only, but these are very important. These will help us in meeting the CIA triad. What is the objective of authentication? Verify the identity of users, devices, systems attempting to access the network. How can we do it? One simple way is putting username and password. And password has its own, how to maintain a strong password which cannot be broken, that can be challenged, quantum, everything. But still, for a common use, yes, username, password is a minimum thing. Then bring multi-factor, bring biometric, bring digital certificates. That way, the authenticity, the communication from the end user to the service provider, or from a user to a client, client to a server, can be maintained. And what is authorization? Granting appropriate access. For example, if you are the host and I am a user, I should not have admin privileges to access the total database, for example. Whatever all kind of services are being provided, I should not be able to do it. I should have access only to what is being as a end user role based. I should be able to see that is provided by access control list, role based access control provider, privilege, all this. Then another thing is network monitoring. When you are providing a service, this I would say is more from a server perspective, host perspective, not the end user. End users today, if he is not from this mobile, hardly any other consumer service he will connect, and he will connect you to your server. But from a server side, as it is the responsibility, as the responsibility is taken or the initiative is taken to host a service, then it becomes the responsibility to ensure availability of network access for that service. How do we do it? Detect and respond to suspicious or malicious activities in real time. Then how can we do it? It cannot be done overnight. So when any organization, whether private or public, as it grows, what happens is it attracts good, it attracts bad elements. So to prevent those nefarious elements from bringing down your service just for fun or to claim that their higher up, what you have to do, you have to build a layered approach. You have to build a layered approach of security that comes under this. How can we do it? By adding firewalls, then adding in that intrusion detection system, prevention system, all this. Now coming to firewall, this is one important thing in any enterprise class. Even in an end PC also has basically a firewall. But we all us, because it restricts, we very easily what we do is we disable it. But even at home also, it is advised to enable firewall, which is default available with all the our one of the major home appliances, home operating systems called Microsoft, or even with Ubuntu, Linux. All these have IP tables whereby these all have firewall features. Now, what is firewall will do? Firewall will establish barrier between the secure internal network and the untrusted external network. You can control. What does a firewall basically do? Firewall blocks all networks and only the required connections, required ports, it keeps open. Why a port is required? If you are saying that you are providing a particular service in networks parlance, you need a port to be open. Example, port 80 HTTP. But if I want to make it secure, then it's port 443, 8080, that way. Now coming to encryption. Now, irrespective of having a firewall, having a monitoring a network, encryption is required because from the end user to the server, from the client to the host, there is communication happening. This communication, this data, to ensure that it properly reaches, encryption is one good mechanism. And nowadays it is required because we have come on to many, not only entertainment. Apart from entertainment, it has been almost a decade where online services of financial, even our personal information, most of the things are online. So if that channel is not secure, there is every chance that data can be stolen or data can be altered, this mechanism. So we need to encrypt the data. And if something happens, it is called an incident, and that incident we need to respond. How do we do it? See, in a practical world, you can never say that zero incident is impossible. Never, it is not possible. Though people say that many words, but all unknown are 0 day. Whatever we are building today is only to protect ourselves against the known vulnerabilities. There are many unknown vulnerabilities. It is as simple as claiming any software, okay? It is as simple as claiming any software is bug free. No software is bug free. We undergo testing, we undergo many aspects, but still it is the strength of the test which brings out many things. There are many scenarios in which many protocols, many ports, many services which were thought to be foolproof for many decades were also exploited after bugs were found in them. And ultimately, physical security. What does it provide? It provides protecting physical access points to network infrastructure. This is where the actual host side infrastructure is quoted. So how can we keep it? It is like restricted access controls, then that is, and then having surveillance, access controls, and environmental controls. So with a brief background of what we have seen now, what is network security? What does it cover? Then what we have seen, how do we ensure CIA triad? So what are the key objectives? How do we meet it? What are the key components? Why it is the importance? Why network security is important? Why should we spend so much on it? Because if we want to protect sensitive information, it is required for preservation of confidentiality. Another very big thing which covers everything is to ensure business continuity, unauthorized access, protection against cyber threats, regulatory compliance, preventing financial loss, protection of intellectual property, another big thing. Then adaptation to evolving threats. So that way, security is something in which everyday goalposts change, your challenges change. Every day we have to be up to date. We have to see the latest threats and again update our devices, add those signatures, update and accordingly keep ourselves ready to protect our devices. We are talking, so definitely in network security, what does it cover? We are saying CIA triad, fine. CIA triad can be applied on air. So where is it to be applied? It needs to be applied. It needs to be updated to some network infrastructure which is used to provide a service. Now, it is not limited to this, but in what does network infrastructure cover? It covers all these different things. We will delve. So whatever protocols, whatever standards we are trying to apply is in one of those to meet the final requirement of final goal is to ensure security. What are the common threats and vulnerabilities? I will not go into details because you people have been hearing and already most of you are experienced working people is what I understand from the. So what are the threats? Threats are malware, phishing attacks, denial of service, man in the middle, insider threats. Please remember, how do you control inside? How do you counter insider threats? That's another. Yes, that is where access controls come into picture. Then zero-day exploits. Zero-day is nothing but any unknown attack, unknown vulnerability. Password attacks, network spoofing, DNS spoofing, poisoning, Wi-Fi attacks, physical layer. There is a lot of literature available today on the net. But these are the major ones, major threats where everybody works to counter. And what are these threats? These threats which when exploited will become are the vulnerabilities which can be exploited. What are the vulnerabilities which can be exploited? That is where it is outdated software and bugs, weak authentication, again unsecured wireless, it is improper configuration only, lack of encryption, again it is irresponsible way of handling communication, inadequate access controls. In fact, if you see many a times whenever a security incident happens, or in OWASP also, you see misconfiguration is also one of the top 10 vulnerabilities. Default credentials, poorly configured. See, many of these are, if you see, 50% is mistake, human mistake. So what do we see? So as we are looking into network security and any service which you provide in a network, in the interconnected system is called a network service, and that any network service, today we all follow TCP IP, but it can be mapped to the fundamental OSI model, whereby we can see what are the different layers, It is a standard way of understanding. In my next slide, I will translate and you will also understand further. But coming from the fundamentals perspective, from the 7 layers of OSI model, if you see, we will start from an application. What is the functionality and what are the protocols or standards? Our standards, HTTPS, HTTP, FTP, DNS, these all are application level. What are the presentation level? Data formats. That is where you provide encryption, code conversion. Examples are MPEG, JPEG, TIFF. And in the session layer, you do the negotiations. Then RPC. Then coming to the transport layer, very important. TCP, UDP, then our current gen TLS, SSL are all handled here. Then coming to the network layer, where you perform the packet routing. These are all the protocols of standard. IP, OSPF, ICMP, ARC. And at the data link layer, it is the frames, basic Ethernet protocols. And at the physical layer, it is where the transmission happens over this layer. So, from an understanding perspective, this layer is required. I have framed my presentation in such a way that we will start with the fundamental aspects of understanding this and focus more on the practical way of things. Continuing this layered approach, so the first and second columns already what we have seen, functionality also is what we see. And now from a security perspective, if you see, the top 3, if you can translate into, it is the TCP/IP model on the right hand side, along with the threats and the cyber attacks that can happen. So the ransomware, virus, worms, malware, ARP spoofing, man in the middle, DNS cache poisoning, this happens at this application presentation session layer. And it is the transport layer where the attacks and sync flooding happens. And at the network and the data link layer, IP spoofing, address spoofing, misconfigured devices, all this happens. And physical is the environmental aspects of this. These come into picture when you use optical communication, when you use other communications whereby the threat of changing. Even when you are using a cabled way also, when the cable gets damages and it is not significant and the packet is reaching, but unless you ensure that the packet bit does not change, there is every risk because of a physical damage also, the data may get corrupted or changed. If you are able to identify the corruption in the data, one should be fortunate enough. If you are not able to detect it, then what happens is the wrong data, which will further increase the complexity and problem. Well, now that 2 slides I purposely focused on from the OSI layer fundamental perspective from the theoretical aspect point of view. Now let us come forward. Let us focus more to the practical approach. Network security protocols. It is all ensuring secure communication between the host and the user. And ensuring, how do you use it? You use it using encryption and decryption mechanism and key exchange protocols. And over that, once you are over that, you need a proper authentication to gain access. That way we can maintain. That is where we have, again, if you remember, that if you think in this perspective, confidentiality, integrity, and availability will come into picture. This is how we can. But practically, these are the protocols in the current arena, in the current era, where whenever you are hosting any service, whether within the organization or for any external user, these are the things. Basically, these secure communication protocols and authentication protocols will ensure that, along with a robust network availability, the meeting of the security aspects. That is the CIA triad as well as the end goal of properly, securely provisioning the services to the user. So I will be focusing on some slides on this TLS SSL and some more on the authentication protocols. We will delve a bit detail. TLS. Nowadays, people don't, it has been, TLS has taken over SSL. Earlier, we all used to speak of SSL. Now it is TLS. already we are into TLS versions, multiple versions have also come. What is TLS? Transport layer security. Why is it required? To provide secure communication over a network that operates at the transport layer. What is it used? What is it used for? It has mainly consists of handshake protocol, record protocol, cipher suits, and certificates. I will go back. If you see, this is what I am trying to delve with in detail. How do you ensure a secure communication between a user and a host? By encrypting the data and having a key exchanges properly. So this is handled using protocol called TLS, transport layer security. And what is the handshake aspect of this? The handshake component establishes a secure connection between the client and the server. This is the fundamental thing, but that is how it takes proper handshake. Then it comes to the record protocol. What does it do? Segments, compresses, and encrypts data for secure combination. What are the cipher suits you are using? Means how are you encrypting it? There are simple ways. I can use a hash. Even examples we can get. Then by MD5. Then I can use keys for exchange, public key, private key. Strength, depending upon the key, the strength changes. There are standards coming up, advisories coming up regularly. We have to update it and ensure that only those are available. That is why you see many scenarios. Sometimes some users, if their browsers are not updated, they will not be able to communicate. That is because the service the OEM of that particular browser has understood that there are vulnerabilities in those versions. They fix it, they update it, and if required, the latest protocols are aligned to the latest protocols. And host also, when he updates his protocol list, and in case one cannot access from a lower version, thus it prevents scope of data leak and ensures the encryption and the confidentiality and integrity of the data and the communication aspect also. And what are the certificates? Digital certificates are used for authentication and authenticate the identity of the communication parties. Where are we to use the TLS? Our everyday we use it. HTTPS, web communication, one of the most nowadays. I can very easily say most important. Most of us are doing many online services. HTTPS it is. It ensures confidentiality and integrity. Then coming to another application, email communication. Email communication also is secure by SMTP, IMAP, and POP. Nowadays, it's most of that is SMTP, but the older ones also there also. Then virtual private network. Nowadays, if you want over internet also, you can private virtual private network tunnels. That also you need. Then secure file transfers. If you are hosting data, earlier it was FTP. Now you are doing SFTP, FTPS to keep the data secure. There also you use the same. Now, having seen the criticality, let us see once understanding the importance, understanding the implication is one thing, and how do we ensure it? How do we implement it? What are the practices to be followed is the next step. You have to enforce HTTPS. Nowadays, this is default. Unless it is internal, you don't host any service in HTTP mode, plain mode, you do not. Another thing is regular updates. Though I will diverge for a second, for any Unity user, there are only two things we can keep in mind. One is keep your operating system up to date, keep your antivirus up to date, most of the things. Then you can say that most of the threats, you are well protected against most of the threats. Then coming to another best, cipher suit configuration. This is where we have, in the previous slide, I have shown you one. I'm going back. If you see, these are the things. Basically, we have to update the host side also. What are all the latest key? There are things which are recommended and which are and eliminate the keys which are found to be vulnerable. That is what is told here, like conduct cipher suit, disable outdated and insecure cipher suits, enable perfect forward secrecy for enhanced security. These are security audits. This is an overall aspect. Any person who builds his own system feels I have built a very good system, but unless a third person sees, we miss many of the things. So a third party audit or a security audit gives from a different perspective. That is where I told in the beginning also. Though don't mix up both network administration and network security. It is the network administrator who has to do the configuration aspects of everything, but it is the security auditor who will verify, who will see from a third party perspective whether the configuration is done properly or not. That is done audits. Then TLS in development. Consider TLS security during application development. Why this is told? This is told because any flaw, any bug, whether it is security or other functional bug, there is a general rule, thumb rules, which says that the cost to the company to fix a bug after it has, when it is in development stage, when it is identified in a development stage, compared to that to fix it when it is operationalized, there is a 1,000 times difference. So during development itself, during the development phase, unit mode itself, ask your teams to, again, as we do functionality testing, do security testing also. So that way, many of the bugs and overheads and threats will get mitigated, as well as you will be doing in a very cost-effective manner to the organization. This is next. IP security is a different perspective, but very important. It's a comprehensive suite of protocols that provide secure communication over Internet IP protocol and is often used to establish virtual private networks to ensure confidentiality, integrity, and authenticity of transmitted data. What are the key components? We say, I have built a VPN tunnel. One of the standard ways is using IPsec tunnel. Now, what are those components of that background? Let us see. It is an authentication header. It provides data integrity, data origin authentication, and protection against replay attacks. What does it use? It uses cryptographic hash functions to create a hash of the packet header and data. What are other components? ESP, encapsulating security payload, security associations, and key management. We will spend a minute here and go back, because generally we don't, when a practical approach, we don't read all those, but let us understand what does it contain. Encapsulating security payload provides confidentiality, data integrity, and optional authority. It encrypts the entire IP packet payload to protect. Security associations, it is the agreements between the communicating devices on how to secure their communication regarding security parameters, including encryption and authentication algorithms. And key management, it involves the exchange and management of cryptographic keys. IKE is commonly used for key negotiation. Internet key exchange. What are the modes of IP security? Transport mode and tunnel mode. Typically used for end-to-end. Transport mode is used for end-to-end communication between two hosts. It encrypts only the payload. Whereas tunnel mode, remember here, it encrypts only the payload. That is transport mode. Whereas tunnel mode commonly used in VPNs to secure communication between networks, encrypts the entire IP packet, including the original IP header. And Internet key exchange, being the key exchange protocol for it, plays a key role in negotiation and establishment of security associations for both tunnel and transport. It is a protocol used to set up a secure communication channel within the context of Internet protocol security. KE functional facilitates the negotiation of security parameters and the establishment of shared keys between two devices, thus enabling to securely exchange data. So IPsec is a mechanism used for secure establishment of a secure communication mechanism. What are the deployment scenarios? Site-to-site VPN, remote access VPN, router-to-router communication, and host-to-host communications. What are the challenges and considerations? configuration complexity. Configuring IPsec requires careful attention to secure policies and key management. Interoperability, ensuring compatibility between devices. Overhead, the additional processing required for encryption and decryption. But please remember, in this current world, this overhead is worth having if you are hosting any service. And if you have a distributed campus, this you have overhead you need to accept and accordingly design and architect your infrastructure or the network. Key management, proper key management is crucial for maintaining the security of the communication. Improper keys will expose our system. What are the types of authentication? Here, if you see, we have seen when we were digressing into some of the basic and important network security protocols. They are broadly as coming from the practical perspective. I told we would like to look at some of the secure communication protocols and authentication protocols. TLS and IPsec are secure communication protocols. Now we will delve some more time on the authentication protocols. Okay. What are the types of authentication? It's a bit detailed. One of the audience may go through it, but password-based authentication, it is very simple, but basic protection can be achieved by using a password-based. If you want to add some more complexity or strengthen your security, add multi-factor authentication. Today, most of our financial transactions which we are doing online today, whether you say it online portals of banking system, whether you say the Paytm, Google Pay, Phone Pay, all this. First you will enter one key, whether it is your fingerprint or it is authentic. Then again you do it. So multi-factor authentication is definitely adds a bigger dimension and thus helps in increasing the security manifold. These are relatively very easy to add, but still the strength which you achieve is more. And if you add properly biometric, unless you are targeted by an attacker, these three things are three aspects of authentication: password-based, multi-factor authentication, and biometric authentication should be more than enough secure. Unless you are a targeted attack. For a common man, this is more than enough. Then further, certificate-based authentication, nowadays any service, digital certificates are part of it. You don't see any banking system without HTTPS. You don't see any service hosted by a government organization or bigger organizations, private also, MNCs or anything. HTTP you will not see. That is where we have discussed today. TLS, the erstwhile SSL replaced by TLS. Once you implement it, it is you have taken care of the proper communication from the client to the server. The data which is in the client's database is protected either using password, multi-factor authentication, or biometric. And the communication is done by certificate-based authentication. What are the protocols? How can we do it? Kerberos. It is used for validating client servers during a network employing a cryptographic key. LDAP. We have heard it. People who are well versed with Windows and Linux, LDAP they might have heard. They might have heard Radius. These are the standard things. Lightweight directory access protocol, directory as a service. What does it prove? If you have heard of Active Directory in Windows domain, it is similar to that. Where is it used for? It is used for authenticating your login. OAuth promotes granting limited access to the user on its account through an HTTP server. When a user requests access to a resource, an API call is made and after authentication token is passed. Then SAML, security assertion markup language. These all are. Radius, one of the older ones. Remote authentication dial-in user service. though we don't use the full form. Radius is many of you are well versed with, heard of. At least many of the network administrator or people in IT infrastructure domain might have heard of LDAP and Radius. Radius also, like LDAP, it provides sufficient centralized authentication, accounting, and authorization for the users that use network and services. An extension of all these is called a single sign-on. An advantage of single sign-on, for multiple applications you are using a single thing. So that single sign-on should be properly configured and protected. So what we have dealt with till now is we have looked into what is network security, how do we achieve network security? I can say by maintaining the confidentiality, integrity, and availability, the network security is maintained. When we have seen the components, then we have seen the protocols. In protocols, we have seen the communication protocols and authentication protocols. Now let us see what are some of the best practices. In one of the slides, I gave you a glimpse of all the infrastructure. Every infrastructure nowadays, unless it is isolated, not connected to anything, then the only security you need there is physical security. But in the current world, there are hardly very few scenarios in there. I would give an example of only your almara where you have stacked your cash or your ornaments. Everything else is connected, including your Aadhaar, your PAN, everything. Most of the individuals have already communicated it over network. That is the importance of network security. That is the amount of data which is already on the network somewhere, which is connected. It is the only physical assets which I have told you which are not connected. In the current world scenario, everything else is connected. So we need to follow some of the best practices. Please understand, firewall, I told it again earlier also, it doesn't mean that firewall is only for enterprises. Many people think in that way. No, even your normal Windows has a firewall feature. And if you see here sum up, when we are discussing the protocols and their implementation aspects, then we have discussed. So we'll just summarize and spend some more time of the best practices. I have planned a couple of slides purposely because when we have seen the vulnerabilities, if you remember, of all the listed around 10, at least 50% were misconfigured, which was human aspects. Means these all could have been avoided. So let us see. Best practices comes is only when it can meet only mitigate the vulnerabilities which are known. Please remember, most of the vulnerabilities which we face today are exploited, are known. Only for the known vulnerabilities you can fix. So let us see what are the best practices. Implement firewall, regular software networks, network segmentation, strong authentication, security awareness training, encryption, IDS, IPS, regular security audits and monitoring, access controls, compliance and regulations. Okay, there are some more slides, but before that I will spend a couple of minutes on each one of them. I would rather start with the most easy, not easy in implementation perspective, but something user has to do is, let us say, it's a network administrative responsibility, firewall implementation. Why? That is why I told. Routing is required to communicate to networks. Agreed. But firewall is which protects you. Firewall fundamental rule, how it works: block all, allow only known. That is how it does. Once you block all unknown elements are blocked. Then you start allowing what is required only for communication between your internal network and the external network. Over. That pushes us to the third point here, network segmentation. When I said internal network and external network, if we properly segment our networks, our devices, the most important one need not be exposed to the direct outside world. So network segmentation itself is important. Then coming to authentication, password, multi-factor. Just now 2 slides back we have seen, that's what we have discussed. And couple of slides back, encryption, protect the data which is being transmitted. Data at rest, if it is so critical, encrypt it. Don't use, have your strong private keys. Use a different channel to share the private key. Enough, over, your data is protected. IDS and IPS, part of firewall nowadays. All the next generation firewalls, unified threat managers are fundamental firewalls along with IDS, IPS, all malware scanners, security scanners, all these features makes up your unified threat manager. And apart from that, these all are network related. But there is one thing which we have there. Update your software, update your firmware periodically so that your device is not exploited. And how do you do? And additionally, this 4th row, strong authentication and access controls. And once you are done that, proper auditing and proper compliance to regulations help us from compliance perspective. It is not that for the sake of compliance we are doing. The effort we are putting it to ensure that the data we are hosting, data we are preserving or archiving is to be met is to ensure that its integrity is maintained, so that the day it is required, it is correct. It is the correct data which is being used. That is why these standards and regulations have come. Keep them as a checklist. That will help you in meeting your security requirements. And last but not the least, the human aspect. Training. Train your brain. That is the only advantage a human being has when compared to the relative to the other things, other animals on the earth. Training. You can train yourself. You can train your brain and improve your security awareness. This will help. If you are lackluster, if you say what will happen, get along, enterprises will not survive in that way. Best practices of network security. Now let us see. It is implementing effect. See, it is what does this diagram communicate? It communicates in such a way that applying if you want to strengthen a particular infrastructure, you follow a layered approach. A layered approach will help you in mitigating different risks. This concept is nothing new. It is something we all knew all along. Even if one layer fails, the next layer will help us to it. That is how you build it. That is called parlance network defense in depth. What does it contain of? Advanced threat protection, intrusion detection, IDS, IPS, web security, email security, forensic analysis, data loss prevention, network generation firewalls, and SIM. What is security event monitoring and incident monitoring? It is nothing but bring out all the device logs to here and try to correlate them, see what is it. Is as per the policies, is the data flowing? Is there any data flow which is not supposed to flow? That itself is an alert which SIM will give. Then what is next? If you want to automate it, use SOAR. Continuing with best practices, we need to understand this is now we are going down. We need to understand the types of network devices. Very fundamental hubs. Nowadays, you don't see hubs anywhere. Switches, routers, bridges are also not used, but gateways. But from a theoretical perspective, I have put, just like I have put the OSI model, it helps in understanding. I'm trying to be at a balance between an understanding perspective and a practical approach. We need to understand the devices which you are using. Only then you can properly configure them and protect the data. What are the? Again, it's firewall, IDS, IPS, network access control can be provided, web filters, proxy servers, anti-DDoS, load balancers, spam filters. These are the different solutions or mechanisms which we can build in our network, which will provide a layered approach of countering and strengthening our internal system. Assuming your internal is safe, which one should never do it, but we are trying to do from two aspects: internal threat and external threat. Segregate your network. It is something we already digressed. Then types of networks. In an example further, I would say, let us take a firewall. In fact, firewall fundamentally is inside and outside. If most of you might have already had experience of working on firewalls. So what are the policies you write? You write from in to out, out to in. But from a theoretical perspective, what we say? Public network, internal network, DMZ, demilitarized zone. So what do we say? Suppose I am hosting a web application, and where is the end user? The end user is outside. Where will we try to communicate? He will communicate to a server. Where should the server be hosted? Ideally, server should be hosted in the DMZ zone. Then any web server is the front end where the user will be hitting. In this, suppose my database has only static, my web page has only static pages, everything content is here only, and the user will not even come inside. Suppose my data or my web page has some database, information which is maintained, IT is advised to put that database inside, so that the user will only put a request to the web server in DMZ zone. DMZ internally, the web application will call the database server, get the required data, and then send it to the external user. So that is the way you have to. Then what else firewall does? Firewall helps in NATing. What is NATing? Since we don't have too many public IPs, you NAT it from this. That is overcome in the current scenarios by migrating to IPv6. But as any common human, we don't change quickly. Why should I change? I am able to meet my requirements with IPv4 with trend, but you are not able to meet the worldwide IoT devices requirement. So for some time, it is a coexistence of both IPv4 and IPv6. And if you are using IPv4, definitely NAT translation is required because you don't have so many public IPs, and so you purchase public IPs from the ISPs, and accordingly the services which you are hosting, you NAT to particular internal IP of the web server or the application. That is network address translation. That also protects. Then there are types of NAT, network address translation: static NAT, dynamic NAT, and port address translation, PAT. This example from where the request is coming, how it is moving to the web server and back is more clearly in this example. I have shared the same. Now moving forward, route direct internet access from workstations through a proxy server. See, what happens is, now this is suppose all outbound web access should be routed through an authenticating web server where access can be controlled and blocked. How do you do it? Using a web proxy. Now this is a different scenario. If you come here, this NATing is not used for, NATing is used for when you are hosting a service. It is to ensure that your public server, that your server in which the application is hosted is available to an external user. But suppose you are within an enterprise class network, then what do? You are trying to, in your office, suppose you have multiple number of systems. Okay, from those systems you are trying to do browsing. So what generally in enterprise class you do is you use a web proxy. So all our requests will go to the web proxy. You are not directly communicating to the external world. This proxy will forward that request to the external server which is hosting the application and return back the packet and meet my requirement. That is one way of protecting the internal client, internal user, internal users, multiple users. In an enterprise class, this is from moving from in to out. When you are trying to browse, this is the mechanism you use a web proxy server for communication. Whereas when you are hosting, you host it behind a firewall in a DMZ zone and with your database in your internal network. These are some of the standard best practices which help in protecting and our server, our service, and thus ensuring the continuity. Continuing forward with some of more best practices, use of IDS, intrusion detection system. Then once you detect it, you have to protect it. How do you detect it? Your device, your firewall should have an intelligence to check up with whether this IP from where a request is coming is a malicious or a good, request. If it is a non-malicious, you can block it. That is the mechanism it takes. That intelligence which is built, which is up to date, will help you in protecting. Then next, there are other best practices. You define access control list. Yes. Then zero trust network access, sandboxing. Okay, in sandboxing, in zero trust network, you see here, there are three key aspects here. What is it? It is something which is known, but they have given it's a new name given, zero trust network access. What is it? Means you at any point in the layers, you don't trust anyone. First, you are validating the device from which you are connecting. I am a user trying to connect a host. First, the device has to be validated. Then the user has to be verified whether he is coming with proper authentication is there or not. And then if proper authentication is then give a proper access control. Don't give him all the privileges. It is as simple as that. And if you want to give a simple example where mistakes happen, generally access privilege, we admin will have, user will have, but what we do is any device when comes with a default admin, we don't change the password. Whole world knows. Then what is sandboxing? Sandboxing is you build a mechanism or a platform in your system whereby any suspected data which is flowing inside on an alert, you host it in that zone, you check it, and only then you allow it inside. Then email security, then data loss prevention, use VPNs, whitelisting the domains, then centralized logging and log analysis. This is an important thing in enterprises. Nowadays, there are mandates, then monitor and baseline network protocols. This monitor and baseline network protocols is nothing but suppose you are an organization of so what happens is if you are under the target of any other state sponsored threat, what they will do is they will continuously scanning their network. That IP segment of yours they will be scanning, so that can be detected. So we need to ensure that when I am hosting a service, whether the required protocols or ports are open or not. What is a protocol? Protocol is a standard or a means by which a particular service is made. To meet that service in networks of the 64K ports, which port is kept open? If unnecessary ports are kept open, it is just as opening unnecessary windows in a house or doors in a house. You have a restricted entry, you keep a closing and an opening mechanism, allow only valid, then your house is more secure. It is as simple as that. If you start thinking in that analogy, you will understand. Then physically secure the network equipment. This comes under physical security, regular patching, security audition. These same things which we are discussed, the same things come under the best practice. It is like everything is known, but I don't follow anything. There is no use of knowing all this knowledge. Now, having gone through all this, let us see some of in the last couple of years, what are some of the cases? I will just bring them to your notice. SolarWinds supply chain attack. Malicious code was inserted into the software updates. And whoever was using the SolarWinds patches, they got compromised. Or the attacker got access to them. Now it is a reverse scenario where he chose the targets who were using this, who he has already breached, and he was selecting. Then capital one data breach. Here, one former employee exploited a misconfigured web application firewall to gain unauthorized access. Of course, in India, still data leak is not punished, but in many of the foreign countries, it is a very big penalty is paid. Data is very important. More than your device, data is given more importance. Of course, there are many organizations in India today also who are responsible for their data and they are taking pain. But what I'm trying to tell is most of our personal consumer level, this has not reached. But they are the humans who are the more important. Enterprises will anyhow take care of them. That is something is yet to come up. The legal aspects, legal punishments, bindings are still not yet strong. Marriott International data breach. It's a long-term breach in a guest reservation system which was acquired. It resulted in unauthorized access to personal information of 500 million guests. Even our recent AIMS, you say what is there in a hospital data, but please understand AIMS is a hospital where our high-profile politicians go for the treatments. That is why it was a target. In the Facebook Cambridge Analytica scandal, inadequate data privacy practices, all these use cases, I have tried to compile them, trying to bring to you different scenarios where of the things which we have listed, where the best practices were not formed. Many of these were because best practices were not formed. Even if there will be big MNCs, it is, if you see here, inadequate data privacy practices. Then WannaCry, it exploited a vulnerable outdated Windows systems. Means if you see the vulnerability which was exploited, it is such a weak and known thing which when not implemented, it affected organizations worldwide, including the national health system in the UK. Yahoo data breaches, multiple security breaches resulted in compromise of billions. Even Rediff, many people might have seen. The breaches involved unauthorized access and theft of user data. All our mail IDs in our groups, they tried to exploit. See, the repercussion, Yahoo reputation led to a delay in Verizon's acquisition of Yahoo. That is how it will impact. Then coming to success stories in implementing. Google's Beyond Corp model. Google's framework eliminates the reliance on traditional VPNs and perimeter security. It focuses on identity and device security. Zero trust. Zero trust is nothing but, suppose, imagine yourself as a layered. Suppose I have 3 layers of gates. Gate 1, I get authentication. Then it doesn't mean that at gate 2 and 3, I should be allowed. Zero trust says that at every gate, again, I have to prove my identity. That's it. As simple as that. Microsoft Security Development Lifecycle is a set of best practices for incorporating security into the software development process. See, if you nip any problem in the budding stage itself, the implication, cost implication, security implication, the reputation implication, all are minimal. That is why some of the big companies are trying to incorporate this into their product lifecycle. Cloudflare, content provider, CDN provider, it uses DNS over HTTPS implementation. Then healthcare industry's adoption of HIPAA, health insurance portability and accountability, set standards for protecting sensitive patient data. What does it contain? Again, the basics: encryption, access control, audit. Ultimately, if it's like how do we make 100, add 1 to 1, then only 100 will come up. So the basic components are the same. So what do we learn? We have to learn, and we have learned many people, and every day, every year, that is why trainings are given to impart the importance of all these, refresh everybody, unlearn old things, learn new things, timely patching and updates. Here it is nothing we are doing. We are not writing the code, but whatever operating system, whatever application we are using, whatever the OEM has released, kindly up to date. User education and awareness, network segmentation, multi-factor authentication, incident response. It is nothing but planning, preparing for a tough day. Need for robust supply chain security. Not only you, who is supplying you, working with you, ensure his protection also. Otherwise, he will become your HL's. Importance of monitoring and verifying the integrity of software updates. Secure configuration practices. Regular security assessments. Effective access control mechanism. Robust incident detection and response. So again and again, it is, if you see, it is meeting those CIA tried requirements of, if you keep it in simple words, maintaining up-to-date things, okay, security patches, maintaining of operating system, antivirus, segment the networks, critical, non-critical, and do an audit, verification. That's it. All these 10 lines can be into 3-4 things. Conclude. By learning from the past failures and implementing the best practices, adopting the successful security models, organizations can better protect their networks and data in an ever-changing threat landscape. This is what I told in the beginning also. In security, goalposts keep changing. If you are a network administrator, if you are a security administrator in your organization, your users will be complaining. Yesterday you allowed, last year it was allowed, now you are not allowing. The threat scenario has changed. You have to accept it and we have to communicate it to them. We have to educate them. It is not only the implementer who has to educate, it is the other user who has to follow also to be educated. So what do we take away from this last 1 hour? Proactive security measures. Again and again, this is important, but I would like to read every word of this, because after a 1 hour of this, you may feel bored, but still, what do we take away from this? What did we understand? Somebody has been continuously saying in this time period that use proactive security measures, continuously improve the system, collaborate and share their experiences so that once you learn it immediately, other one will protect himself, and adaptation to modern threats. Thank you.